Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, this will kind of have a overview of all the different exam board specifications, year groups, broken down into that. So you'll see the different classes within those specifications and year groups. And just as a heads up, this might look slightly different for different people, depending on your permissions. So if you're an admin or leader, you'll see a list of all the different ones your school has subscribed to, or if you're just a teacher of, say, drama, you'll just see those subjects there that you're a teacher of. So yeah, another thing to just quickly mention as we go ahead and add a new class, which is, again, one of the key features that you'll start to use as you're new to the platform, is a minor difference that some of you may experience is if you're synced or not. So yeah, if you're synced with your MIS, you'll see this option here when you add a class, and that will mean that we're getting your data from your class lists directly from your MIS, whether that's Sims or Bromcom, that kind of thing. Or you may not be synced, and there'll be an indication like this here. But if you're not synced, then you can just add a class manually, or for some instances, even if you are synced, you can add a manual class to just track a specific student for whatever reason. But today we're going to go ahead and do this. And then you'll be taken to a screen like this, where you can then choose the particular qualification that you want to pick. Again, depending on what your subscription is, you'll see the options of all the different subjects there, and we'll go for GCSE in English language, and we'll go for edXL. So then again, you'll get a breakdown of which classes you want to use, and we'll go for that one there. Cool. And then it will usually take a little minute to add the class, but we will go to English language, and you'll see the class appear here, and it might just take a minute to load up, as you can see. So we will just jump in to, oh, no, there we go. And it will just load up. Nice. So now what you've got is the kind of a tracker that's just based exactly on that exam board that you've picked. So we've picked edXL, so that will mean that all the topic summaries, the units are based on that exam board, and also the grade boundaries, which you can see there. So from left to right, you'll see the cells to add in your different marks for each of your papers here. So the lighter cells are where you can enter the data, like so. And then in these darker cells here, you'll start to see the totals adding up, and then you'll also see the grades start to show here. Now, a common support thing that we sometimes get asked is where you'll see the blocker sign, and the two main reasons for that will be where you're looking at the total here, and if it's a minimized section, you might come onto the tracker and wonder why you can't enter any data. And that will just mean if there's a plus sign here, it just needs to be maximized up. So yeah, that's that. So let me just move on. Oh, lost my mouse there. Bear with me. Cool. So if we now go to add a published assessment, again, probably one of the most common things you'll do when you're looking at the tracker. Another thing to mention here is the difference between, say, a repeatable structure like English and then non-repeatable courses such as maths. They will look slightly differently in this section. So for example, when you add a published assessment here, you'll get the option to select which unit you want to add it to. But then if it's a repeatable structure like English, you'll get this little warning here which tells you that you don't need to pick a specific exam paper from, say, 2019, because they're all the same every year. They follow the same structure. You don't need to pick a specific specification from a specific year. So we can go to save and collapse once we've given it a title. And you'll see this add here, and we can do create assessment. Cool. So if we go back to the tracker, once this is added, you have, whilst this is loading, you have also got the option to load, add a few different assessments in that page there. So you can add a few at once if you're doing quite a few. And then you'll see this one appear here where that's just been added. And another thing you can do with adding assessments is also creating your own customized assessment rather than a full published one. So if you are wanting to just, they're just sitting a mock which consists of a few questions rather than a full paper, you can add your own test, which I'll quickly show you. Again, you can do the full question level analysis if you're just doing a few questions, and then you also have the option to change the grey boundary slightly. And changing the grey boundaries slightly is really helpful for the tiered subjects in particular, but we are going to do another webinar that will cover that more specifically, so definitely keep an eye out for the tier group kind of specific stuff. So let me just go back to the tracker. Cool. So as we just mentioned tiers, I will quickly just show you on a tiered subject here. We've got maths, for example. The way to change them is, again, opening tools and going to the move students tier. And this will then open the tracker out and allow you to change different students. So as you can see here at the moment, there are different students in higher and foundation. And once you've selected the different ones, you'll then be able to change and flip between the two in that one class. So yeah, that's just a quick overview. But as I said, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into that in a few weeks with another webinar. Cool. So back to the English tracker. We will go back to tools and look at the edit assessments breakdown. So again, this is really helpful, especially also with the tiered stuff, and when you've added a few different assessments, and some of them are different across different classes, it's really good to kind of see an overview. So if I actually go back to the tracker, of course you can see all the assessments you have listed here, but sometimes it is good to have kind of a general overview of what's what. So if you, again, go to edit tracker option. Oh, sorry, wrong one. If we go to tools and edit assessments, you'll get that nice breakdown, which kind of narrows down, looking at all the different assessments which are assigned to which units, and also if they're counting towards the summary grades. And you'll also see, obviously we've only got the one class in this particular exam board, but you'll see a breakdown of classes and you'll see whether they're associated to that class or not. So from this view, it's really good to basically, if you want to not count a specific test to that unit and not count towards the summary grades, you can do that by unticking this selection here. But one thing to mention is that you always need to have at least one published assessment associated to each unit. So if you didn't, for some reason, want it to be visible on the tracker, you can hide it here where the class is highlighted. You can just untick it from being visible, but you always need to have one published paper associated to the summary grades for each unit. You can also move the positioning of them here, which will also change the order that they appear in the tracker. And yeah, once you're done, you can save your changes, and you can also delete a whole assessment from there as well. So yeah, that's again just a brief overview of that. And when you do set up a new tracker, you'll always have one default assessment, I suppose, for each unit, which will again always be a published paper. You can change them and edit them, but yeah, again, the one published paper will always need to be visible. Cool. So I will just go back to the tracker. And we will just quickly look at the summary section again. So yeah, as I mentioned, you can obviously change the different assessments that are counting towards these summary grades, but this is the really useful section really to have a look at how students are doing throughout the year, their current grade, and also the target grade. So we the average unit grade, sorry. So the difference kind of between those two is essentially the current grade is based on the overall total marks that the student has attained, whereas the average unit grade is only taking into account the units that each student has attempted. So yeah, that's the working at grade there. So yeah, always a good section to refer back to throughout the year. So another thing we will have a quick look at is tagging and filtering. So you'll see this option here on the left-hand side for tagging, and this can be really useful if you're wanting to create like an intervention group, kind of summarize and have a look at certain students that meet a certain criteria. So you can use the tagging feature. So say, for example, we've got these here. You can go and create your new tag, but for this example, I will just have a look at these two here. So for example, you have got test here. So we can go ahead and show these. We can also create a new tag, and this will just allow you to kind of set the different settings of whether it's active, who can use that tag, so whether it's a leader of or just yourself, how many year groups you want to use, and also the subjects you want it to be used by. And then once you've enabled that particular tag, you can go through and we can tag these various students. Cool. And then once you've got the test, filter tag there, you can then go to filters and filter it by the specific tag, which will then allow you to just see those students. And then, like I said, you'll just have a specific group that you just want to look at that, then you can export that data or do whatever you need to do with it. So yeah, that's a quick overview of that. You can also filter by various things. Comparison to MTG is a really useful one. And yeah, you can have a look at if they're kind of how they're doing compared to their MTG, and these are all color coded as well. Cool. So let's get off that and let's go back to the dashboard. Cool. So yeah, the next thing we will just have a quick look at is The analysis section. So again, really useful for kind of keeping track of how things are going throughout the year. All of these do slightly different things, but one we'll have a quick deep dive into is the grade summary. So this kind of has a look at all of the grades throughout that particular year. So I've brought up year 11 in particular. And again, going back to that color coding for comparison against their MTG, this color coding meets that same criteria. So whether they're on track or 3 away, doing better than, it will highlight it in this summary section here. It's also really good to kind of have a look at where some missing data might be. Gives you kind of an idea that maybe you need to, you know, have a look at these particular students if there's a lot of missing data and those particular subjects. Yeah, and then you'll be able to get a better idea of how they're doing. So yeah, that's a little brief overview of the analysis section. And we'll quickly, lastly, just look at reports. So you've got your reports here. This is, of course, where you can go and you can select how you'd like to download a set of reports. So you can do this really in a few different ways. Again, you can go to different attributes, such as these here, if they're on Pupil Premium, that kind of thing. Or you can also look at the tag as well. So as I explained before, if you want to look at a particular intervention group, then you can just get the reports for that group. And then you've got year group, which is pretty self-explanatory, subject, and also student. And that will kind of download it and email it to you once you've requested the set of reports. And another thing to mention is the report template. So you can create a report template that you can kind of have a few customizations on. So if you want all of the reports into one file, a setting that's really important is this one, rather than it sending loads of different files for all the different students. So that's one to remember. And you can also do various things like hide these elements here. So yeah, that's a good one to keep an eye on if you're doing a load of report downloading. Yeah, you can set new templates there. So yeah, that's a lot of information to take in at once. Like I said, that was very much a whistle-stop tour of a few different features and elements of the platform. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. I don't know if anyone's got any questions, or if there's been any questions throughout. I think my colleague Holly is happy to answer any of them. But yeah, also we'll be doing these quite regularly, and we'll be having a look at more specific topics throughout the coming months. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're planning on doing one related to tiered subjects. Yeah, just some of the more complex things. So we will yeah, keep people updated and definitely keep an eye out.
Yeah, that's great. Like Ellie mentioned, it's kind of a very very broad overview of the platform. If there's anything kind of more school specific or even sort of subject area specific that of course entails running through data and things like that, we're more than kind of happy to book in calls. You'll see the little icon at the bottom right as well that takes you through to our help center, just so you can come through to one of us, whether it be like a gap or a break between your classes. We're happy to kind of schedule in some support there. I can just see a few questions that have popped up. Let me just double check these for you. Yes, so thanks so much for sending these questions in, by the way. You will get an email sent through. Essentially what we'll do, we'll just end the session at about 4 o'clock, and Zoom will just send through to us a recording of the session that we can get sent through. Oh, yes. Which is really helpful. In terms of a timetable for these events, we are looking to do these sort of every fortnight, but we are still coming up with a schedule at this point in time. However, we do have kind of a list of the registrants for this session. So if it is of interest in the future, we're more than happy to kind of communicate any upcoming sessions, as well as just sending out like general marketing, things like that. In terms of the point of the walkthrough, which is a really kind of I mean, it says what is the purpose of this, which is a very fair question. It's just to help you kind of navigate the platform in general, just so when you do have those more specific questions, you can kind of understand where you're looking at, just so you've got some sort of foundational knowledge. In terms of its purpose at a sort of student level, so you can actively sort of track throughout the year how your students are doing and sort of predict how they may perform during the exam period based on the data that you've sort of collated throughout the year. So that's what we're here for. It gives you kind of a holistic whole school picture of the student, as subject leaders will be able to kind of see how the student is performing subject by subject. So if they seem to be struggling in anything, it kind of gives you the data that you would need to make those informed decisions and conversations with certain members of staff, and even including the parents as well, just to see how best to help the child. Let me just see if we've got any other ones. Let me just check. In terms of scheduling in a support call, that's very easy to do. If you just reach out to the help chat in the bottom right of the screen, you can send through a general sort of message that will take you through a workflow. We've got a fair supply of help articles as well related to specific features on the site. But as well from there, you can directly sort of book in a call if you're noticing that it would be easier to communicate any sort of obstacle that you've got on there. Because yeah, sometimes it is easier to kind of get through and speak to a person. And yeah, we'd received some feedback that video calls are kind of easier because we can do similar to this and present our screens just to run through any sort of specific issues for you. So yes, I can't see any other questions at the moment, but like I mentioned, if anything comes to mind following the session, just let us know. And as soon as we've got the recording to hand, we'll get that sent through to all of the people that have signed up. So yeah, thanks again for attending. And yes, thanks Ellie for running through all of that as well, while I just kind of sat here.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. And yeah, hope to see you at some future webinars. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much.
Bye bye.